going into the Q&A now. Welcome, everyone, into the Delta conversation. This was pretty interesting. When I saw the carrying model for the first time, I'm like, wow, that's really cool. Like, that really answers a lot of questions. The quantum thinking model is pretty interesting, the internalization model. Last week, we went ahead and talked about Box 1, Identify Targets, actually did a lesson on that in the 530 grid. And so we could have questions today on any of what we went over, the Delta, the carrying model, quantum thinking, internalization. We'd like to welcome two guests, Allison and Sophia. Allison's biggest challenge is getting appointments with buyers, and Sophia is sales. So we'll swing around to those, so welcome, ladies. Ski, any thoughts, questions, insights you have?
Well, yeah, thanks, Mark. I think the idea of having a delta in your life, and there's probably people don't even recognize it that they have in some cases, and so being a little bit more cognizant of that and conscious of who that is, and if you don't have one, finding one. So maybe talk a little bit about, for the audience here, for everybody, about finding a delta.
Sure. Deltas are, sometimes they're hidden and sometimes they're obvious. If they're obvious to you, they might be a little bit repulsive. You might not like them initially. They tend to, because they don't need a group. They're actually never part of your group. They're visitors. They'll participate and they'll bring value to your group, but you can't kick out a delta because a delta is never really part of a group. They might tend to have maybe what some call social autism. Like they might be very direct with you. They might tell you things that you've never been told before, or they might be painfully direct with you. So they might be offensive, to you. And so you initially might not like them. You might misinterpret them as being arrogant, manipulative. You might characterize them as being jerks, mean, nasty, even emotionally abusive. So a delta is just a strange bird, and so a lot of times people aren't going to like them initially, but if they really get to know them, they actually can tell that the deltas typically are going to be in the 7, 8, 9, 10 dimensions for caring, because they're not, they care so much about people that they're willing to put the relationship at risk, and very few people are. Like most people won't tell you the truth, not because they're caring, it's because they don't want the drama, they don't want the mess, they don't want to lose you as a friend, so they're not going to tell you the truth. They're going to tell you what you want to hear. Allison, Sophia, any thoughts that either of you have on this?
Yeah, I'm just listening. Go ahead, Allison.
Yeah, okay. So my question is, what is the definition of the term delta? Because I only know delta from geography, that, it is a place where, all the mineral deposits. So what is the actual definition?
Yeah, Joe Reed, when I asked him, I said, okay, what's a delta? He said, you can drop a delta anywhere in the world, and they'll change everything around them. So it's an agent of change. So when Paul gets into a group, like he's got a role here, he's got role 5. Technically, role 5 should go ahead and help role 11 and 12. So he's got two ARRT buddies. But Paul's not just interested in helping 2. He's going to start helping these individuals. Then he's going to start helping these. So even though he's just one of 30, even though he's not the host, he's not role 30, it's not really his responsibility to help all 29 other people, but he will. And once you get the 30 filled, then you start moving into the quantum area, where all of a sudden it starts to expand out to 15,330 people. And Paul, he'll impact all of those people based on, again, not sure what it is. It could be energy, excitement. So they're an agent of change. They're really disruptors in any type of group or organization. Does that help, Allison?
So this disruptor is supposed to cause positive change, or?
That's the tricky part, Allison. That's a trick question, Allison.
Okay. That's why I'm on this call.
Yeah, no, that's why we love having you on the call. You ask heart. You're probably. Are you a disruptor, Allison?
I don't know.
I think you might be a little bit of a delta. You ask. That's the deltas. They do ask hard questions. That make people uncomfortable, and so a delta. It may disrupt things in a negative way, or people may think it's a negative disruption. They're willing to take 2 steps back to take 4 or 5 steps forward. They're not afraid of disrupting things, good or bad. They might even say, well, any disruption is a good disruption. And so once my wife asked her, any of you, there's actually a mastermind seminar coming out to you guys' area, I think next April, May. And there's one in San Antonio. Hopefully you guys in January, end of January, it'd be great for you guys to all go to it. You might even be able to meet my wife, and I think we might both be going there. So we were, after one of the events, we were, having lunch, and I went around the table and said, hey, what's one thing that everybody might think I could improve, or an observation or something? And my wife said to me something very significant. It's like 5-6 years ago. She said, Mark, sometimes I think you tear down what you're trying to build up. It's really sweet of her. Like, she wasn't judging me. She wasn't saying it was bad. It's just a very, profound, tremendous insight where I'm like, huh. So tearing something down could be good, or tearing something down could be bad. So I think, Allison, I don't know that it's not going to always be one way or another. They're willing to risk bad to get to great. Does that help, Allison?
Yeah, I can accept that.
Yeah, great question. Love it. Sophia, your thoughts?
I'm listening. I'm just taking this all in.
Anyone else have any thoughts, insights, questions?
Hi, Mark. I finally got on. I've been on for a while. I'm in the car.
Cool, Don. Good to have you on. Any thoughts, questions you have?
From what I was hearing, I guess the main theme that I get out of it is if you want things to change.
Sorry, you cut out there.
I was saying that I was actually quoting a Jim Rohn quote, which is that if you want things to change, you have to change.
Interesting.
So it's more of a mindset thing.
Yeah, mindset of taking ownership of things. Jim Rohn said, I don't know how to motivate people, so I find motivated people. It was right after he passed away, and one of his big followers, Peter Smith, was talking to me, and we were working on models to motivate his team. And he said, well, Jim Rohn says he doesn't know how to motivate people, Mark. I'm like, okay. How am I supposed to know? And so nobody knew, and I've been invited to the White House, know a lot of international leaders, so I started asking around, hey, how do you motivate people? Plus I said, I'd love to talk to him, like, what if one of those unmotivated people is one of your own children. Like, you can't just find another child. It's like you're kind of stuck. And so anyways, started asking. And so two of my nieces at the time, they were 5 and 7, and I was writing a book, Lifelong Relationships, how to build relationships which last a lifetime. So I asked them, I said, hey, Brienne and Olivia, Uncle Mark's trying to find the secret to motivating people. You know, Mr. Rohn, he says he doesn't know how to motivate people, but I don't know, do you guys know how to? Bless their heart. Brienne, 7 years old, she didn't even think. She says, well, Uncle Mark. She's like, well, Uncle Mark, the way that they motivate us in Girl Scouts to sell cookies is to tell us stories. Now, you think about that. A 7-year-old. She had to first know what motivation was. Then she had to internalize it to herself and say, when have I been motivated? Then she found a place, Girl Scouts. Then she had to figure out how she went ahead, how they did it, and she came up with telling stories. So she had to go through all of that quantum thinking, and it was instant. I mean, it wasn't even a pause. She knew exactly when it was. And it's like, oh my gracious, she's a genius. And so thinking different, that's one of the reasons I love kids, small children and teenagers. They think in a very different way, and they challenge the status quo. So I think going through those things are important. Ski wanted us to make sure, too, that we talked about last week's lesson on identifying targets, building a database. Allison, you said your biggest challenge was getting appointments with buyers, and Sophia, you said sales. So, Allison, would you 1 to 10? How would you rate how good your database is?
Not good. I think it's only 3.
3. Okay. Well, that's okay. Sophia, how about you?
Well, I think my database is pretty good, but in my line of work, it's trend-driven. So where the economy is good and everybody's credit is good, my business goes down.
Right. And so next week, I think, we're going to be doing box 2 on the 530 grid, which is going to be develop and deliver a message. So they're kind of in tandem here. It doesn't do any good to have an amazing database if we're not going to develop and deliver a message. It doesn't do any good to have a great message if we're not going to go ahead and have a database to send it to. So the thing that I have found is through the ARRT system, the buddy system, where you have an ARRT mentor, and so you have one person helping you, and then you're helping 2 other people. And so I would challenge all of you guys to kind of hold one another accountable to get that database together, because once you get your database together, and it's really everyone you know, once you get your database together, then all of a sudden the next piece is, how do I come up with a message? And there's what's called sticky messages. So I taught a 7-week course from the book Made to Stick. And so we'll talk about the 6 different checklists that you can have to make a message sticky. So in this world of internet and media pounding everybody, how do you just little old you and me come up with messages? And the secret is ask a question, tell a story. So we'll talk about that. But the key is to get a system in place where you're touching your database minimum of once a month, ideally twice a month. Well, better than once a month is twice a month, and ideally once a week. You're not selling them anything every week. What you're doing is bringing something of added value so they start to spread that out to other people. So we'll plan on doing that next week. Anyone else have anything else that you want to cover today? So Allison, on getting appointments with buyers, there's a whole bunch of different, next week's will be a really great lesson on that. And so there's things that you can do in your database. There's things that you can do in developing a message in a system to touch a bunch of different databases. and be consistent on that. And when you have that, like Tom Kuntz, he's the past president of Century 21, largest real estate franchise in the world, at least when he was president a number of years ago. He said that in his 40 years of experience.
It happens to be Keller Williams now on the announcers list.
What's that?
I said that the number one spot goes to Keller Williams now, which is who Allison actually worked with.
Oh, cool. And so Tom said in his 40 years of experience in the real estate industry that if a realtor has 500 in their database and they work that 500, in his experience, that realtor will never have to make cold calls if they have a strong 500 database. Sophia, we'll talk next week further, and I think somebody will be connecting with both of you ladies about doing a gift. It's called a 30-minute strategy session. There's no cost. It's just a gift from Life Masteries to you, and that'll help you get to know it's a couple members of the group better and the group to get to know you guys better and see if this is the right group for you and how it can make the biggest impact, on what you're looking at doing. So,
Okay.
Anyone else have anything else? You guys all good?
Yep, we're all good.
All right. Thanks. Have a blessed day. We'll see you.
You too.
Okay. Bye-bye.